Some things should stay buried, and some stories shouldn't be retold, but Hollywood just can't help itself. Today we're unearthing the 10 most horrifying horror remakes. Not because they're scary, but because they butchered the classics. Join me for this episode of Ranking Rumble. Welcome back to WWH. My name is Andrew Dreamer. A little over a month ago, we talked about the best horror remakes of all time, but now it's time to look at the other side of that coin. I believe I said something along the lines of, for every good remake, there are several bad ones. It was something similar to that, and it's the truth. To be honest, it was hard for me to narrow this down to just 10. As always, this is just my opinion. If you disagree, that's okay. Just let me know in the comments what horror remake you think is the worst. On that note, grab your popcorn and make your way to your seat. Let's head down to the ring and get this rumble started. Starting us off at number 10 is Rob Zombie's Halloween. Released in 2007, this film is divisive to say the least. One of my main criticisms is its excessive focus on Michael Myers' backstory. While the original film thrived on mysteries, Zombie delves deep into Michael's childhood trauma and motivations. This not only strips the character of his enigmatic nature, but also paints him as a sympathetic figure, which arguably diminishes the impact of his brutality. Another point of contention for me is the remake's departure from the original's tone and atmosphere. John Carpenter's Halloween is a masterclass in suspense, utilizing minimal violence and gore, and a haunting score to create a sense of dread. Zombie, however, opts for a grittier, more graphic approach, filling the screen with gratuitous violence and disturbing imagery. While I do enjoy movies of this sort on some occasions, it just feels out of place for the Halloween franchise to me. I just feel gross watching this one. But I will say, it could have been a lot worse. Next up at number 9 is Prom Night, released in 2008. This movie is a disappointing and lackluster attempt to reimagine the 1980s slasher classic. One of its biggest flaws lies in its deviation from the original's suspenseful and mysterious atmosphere. The remake opts for a more generic and predictable plot, lacking the intrigue and tension that made the original so captivating. The characters in the remake are also shallow and underdeveloped, failing to evoke empathy or investment from anybody. The film's PG-13 rating further hampers its potential, resulting in watered-down violence and a lack of genuine thrills. Additionally, the remake's reliance on jump scares and cliches make it feel unoriginal and formulaic. Overall, the 2008 Prom Night remake ultimately fails to capture the essence of the original, delivering a forgettable and underwhelming experience that disappoints both fans of the original and newcomers alike. I like Brittany Snow and a lot of the other cast as well, but this just ain't it. It's just a letdown. Coming in at number 8 is Carrie from 2013. I don't like this one because of its unnecessary existence and failure to improve upon Brian De Palma's 1976 classic. While boasting a talented cast with Chloe Grace Moretz and Julianne Moore, the remake ultimately falls flat due to its lack of originality and innovation. It closely follows the plot of the original, offering little to distinguish itself and making it feel redundant and uninspired. Furthermore, the remake struggles to capture the same emotional depth and intensity as the original. The characters feel less developed, and the overall tone lacks the same chilling atmosphere. The updated setting and special effects fail to compensate for the absence of the original's raw and visceral impact. It fails to justify its existence as a reimagining of a beloved classic. It falls short in terms of originality, emotional depth, and overall impact, leaving me longing for the power and the nuance of the original film. Our number 7 entrant is Psycho, released in 1998. The Psycho remake is widely considered a misguided and unnecessary attempt to recreate a cinematic masterpiece. Director Gus Van Sant's decision to replicate Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 film almost shot for shot, with only minor updates to the setting and dialogue and the butthole, resulted in a film that felt redundant and devoid of originality. The remake failed to capture the suspense and psychological depth of the original, lacking the same chilling atmosphere and intensity. One of the major criticisms of the remake was the miscasting of Vince Vaughn as Norman Bates. Vaughn's performance lacked the subtle nuance and unsettling charm that Anthony Perkins brought to the role, making Norman Bates less menacing and ultimately less compelling. The updated color palette and modernized soundtrack also detracted from the film's overall impact, failing to evoke the same sense of dread and unease. This movie is pointless, offering nothing new or innovative to the story. It serves as a reminder that some classics are best left untouched, as their brilliance cannot be replicated or really improved upon. At number 6, we have The Omen, released in 2006. This is another lackluster and unnecessary rehash of a horror classic. While it closely follows the plot of the original 1976 film, it fails to capture the same suspenseful atmosphere and chilling tone. The remake feels like a pale imitation, lacking the originality and depth that made the original so freaking effective. One of the main criticisms I have is its reliance on jump scares and visual effects, sacrificing the psychological tension and slow burn horror that made that original film unsettling. The performances, particularly that of the child actor playing Damien, lack the unnerving presence and subtle menace that Harvey Stephens brought to the role in the original. The Omen remake is a missed opportunity. It offers nothing new whatsoever. I think there are a lot of ways that they could have maybe not improved on the story, but at least differentiated this from the original enough to warrant its existence. And the only thing that I actually like about this movie is Liev Schreiber. I've always enjoyed his acting. Coming in at number 5 is Cabin Fever, released in 2016. Pointless and unnecessary seems to be a recurring theme today. This film closely follows the same plot of Eli Roth's original, and even used the same spec script, offering little to differentiate itself from the original. This lack of originality makes this remake feel redundant and uninspired, as it fails to bring anything new or innovative to the story. The biggest criticism I have with the remake is the lack of the gritty charm and low-budget aesthetic that made the original somewhat endearing. The updated production values and polished look feel out of place for a story about a flesh-eating virus in a remote cabin. Additionally, the characters lack the same charisma and likability as the original cast, making it difficult to care about their fates. This is yet another movie that fails to justify its existence as a reimagining of a cult classic. It lacks the originality, charm, and character development of the original, making me question the purpose of its creation. Next up at number 4 is going to be Poltergeist from 2015. This is a prime example of a failed attempt to recapture the magic of a beloved classic. One of the most significant flaws of the remake lies in its lack of originality. The film, like others on this list, follows the plot of the original, offering little to no surprises or fresh perspectives. It feels like a pale imitation, devoid of the ingenuity and creativity that made the first Poltergeist so memorable. The characters are bland and one-dimensional, lacking the depth and relatability of their counterparts in the original film. They fail to elicit empathy or investment, making the entire experience feel emotionally hollow. The remake also suffers from poor execution in terms of scares and atmosphere. The original Poltergeist was known for its slow burn tension and genuinely terrifying moments. In contrast, the remake relies on cheap jump scares and predictable tropes, failing to create a genuinely scary moment. To be honest, this might be the most forgettable movie on this list. I remember when it came out and have completely forgotten about it since. It wasn't up until I was researching for this video that I was like, oh yeah, that was an actual movie. Our number 3 entrant in this ranking rumble is The Fog, released in 2005. The 2005 remake of John Carpenter's The Fog is a prime example of a horror remake gone wrong. It fails to capture the atmospheric dread and slow burn suspense of the original, opting instead for cheap jump scares and a convoluted plot. The characters are underdeveloped and lack the charm or the depth of their counterparts in the original. They are often reduced to mere plot devices, making it difficult to care about them. The acting is also underwhelming, with wooden deliveries and a lack of chemistry between the leads. Additionally, the special effects are distractingly poor, especially considering the advancements in technology since the original film's release. The fog itself, a crucial element in creating the ominous atmosphere, looks artificial and unconvincing. Overall, The Fog is a forgettable and poor remake that tarnishes the legacy of the original. It lacks the suspense atmosphere and character development that made John Carpenter's film a classic. Instead, it serves as a reminder of the risks and pitfalls of remaking beloved horror films without a clear vision or respect for the source material. At number 2, we have A Nightmare on Elm Street from 2010. This film was met with widespread criticism and is largely considered a lackluster reimagining of the original. One of the main issues was the tonal shift, as the remake opted for a darker, more serious approach, removing that subtle humor and playful nature that made Freddy Krueger an iconic villain in the original. And I'm not saying there's no humor here, I'm saying that the humor here is just weird. It doesn't make sense. This resulted in a less engaging and ultimately forgettable antagonist, despite Jackie Earle Haley doing pretty well with what he was given. Additionally, the remake relied heavily on CGI for its special effects, which often looked unconvincing and took away from the visceral horror of the practical effects used in the 1984 original. The updated backstory for Freddy also proved very controversial, as it made his crimes more explicit, which I found unnecessary and gratuitous. Furthermore, the acting performances were underwhelming, with the new cast failing to capture the charisma or the chemistry of the original ensemble. The overall plot and pacing also felt rushed and formulaic, lacking the suspense and creativity that made Craven's original film so great. While the 2010 remake may have its defenders, it ultimately pales in comparison to the original and serves as a reminder of the challenges and the potential pitfalls of revisiting a beloved horror franchise. Our final entrant in this ranking rumble is going to be Black Christmas, released in 2019. This remake misses the mark as a horror film and a remake, failing to capture the chilling atmosphere of the original film. This film's attempts at social commentary feel forced and heavy-handed, overshadowing any potential scares or thrills or message. The characters are underdeveloped and unlikable beyond belief. Furthermore, the plot deviates significantly from the source material, introducing a cult element that just feels out of place and undermines the grounded suspense of the original film. The film's pacing is very uneven, with slow exposition-heavy scenes followed by rushed action sequences that lack tension. The kills are unimaginative and lack the visceral impact that made the original a slasher classic. Overall, the 2019 Black Christmas remake fails to deliver a satisfying horror experience. It sacrifices suspense and atmosphere for clumsy social commentary, resulting in a film that neither scares nor provokes thought. Fans of the original are likely to be disappointed by this misguided attempt to update a classic. I mean, this version of the story makes the 2006 version look phenomenal, and that version very well could have ended up on this list. That's how bad this movie is. But there you have it. Those are my top 10 worst remakes of all time, according to me. If you enjoyed this look at some pretty awful movies, be sure to like the video, share the video, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss any of the action here at WWH. Also, check out the links down in the description below if you're interested in any of my merchandise, some Redcon 1 products, or supporting the channel over on Patreon. By the way, if you're interested in hearing about the best horror remakes of all time, click the video that you're going to see in just a moment on that end screen. And remember, in the squared circle of horror, there's no count out for nightmares. My name is Andrew Dreamer, and this is Wrestling with Horror.